Hey guys, this is my next Q&A video. So sorry it's been taking me so long to get this video out. Had to go through a little bit of a move. I was sick for a little while there as well. In any case, back in production mode. So the first question I have for today comes from Ariana, and she talks about being in the presence of somebody who every time she's around them, she feels like her energy is being drained out through her feet. And this sounds like a type of vampirism. Now, a lot of people vampirize the energy of those around there accidentally just by having an incredibly self-centered opinion, always needing the center of attention in the room to be on themselves, because we share conscious energy. So whoever's thoughts are dictating what the other people in the room are thinking is going to gain a great deal of energy from that. They're gaining control over the thought atmosphere. But on a more intentional level, technique for energy vampirism, one of them that's quite effective is to extend roots into the ground and use those roots to actually draw somebody else's energy out through their root. You know, we're so used to perceiving other people's energies coming at us head on, face to face, that we don't think about it coming from other directions, much less when we are in the habit of keeping our energy deeply rooted into the ground. The idea of defending from that direction might not be intuitive at first. So the goal here is to learn to exert a certain level of personal gravity. And this comes in two ways. One is, of course, in your conduct and your conversational circumstance. If you are going to be the quiet one who lets somebody else dominate the conversation, you need to be drinking energy in from that, not giving energy to it. And the other side of this gravity is simply holding your energy tightly within yourself. When you're with people you trust, when you're looking for psychic connection, you open up, you relax your energy field. But when you're in mixed company or in the company of people who might not be generous of heart, you got to pull it in tight. You got to create a shell, and it's got to be above, below, behind, on the sides, everywhere. And really work on having a sense of the core elements of your personality, not the core elements of your spiritual self. That's something you share with all people, but the core elements of your individual self, and hold those separate from outside influence. So anyway, those are some defensive tactics that you can use when dealing with vampirism. Next question's from John, and he asks, what is the difference between low magic and high magic? Well, if you ask me, anytime you say, what's the difference between this side of the fence and that side of the fence, I'm going to say if you knock that fence down, it'll just be a patch of dirt, you know? We as humans have a habit of sometimes overclassifying, and the high magic, low magic thing made a lot more sense in an earlier era. It made a lot more sense when you had people living up on a hill with access to books and knowledge and tools, and other people who were living down in the lowlands, farming using herbs and folk practices that were learned by word of mouth. In modern practice, though, really blending the two, it's not even a blending of the two anymore. It's like we have a new way that originated in high magic and low magic, and in a few other directions as well, but we all draw from it as part of a single pool of knowledge. So at a certain point in time, yes, the difference between low magic and high magic was very relevant. However, when we look at modern practice, do you want to combine ceremony with the use of herbs and crystals? Do you want to use candles not just to light the room, but as a focal point of the spell? Whether that even comes from low magic or high magic historically, it comes from both. So as we blend them together today, we're not blending two completely separate things. We're just participating in an ongoing separation and reintegration that is halfway cultural, halfway individual, and ultimately not a defining characteristic because they're both using the same varieties of power under the direction of the conscious human will. So Indigo Veil Plume would like me to talk a little bit about love and loneliness. And you know, when he posted that comment, it was actually a very funny synchronicity. I had just woken up from a rather interesting dream about someone that I used to have a great deal of love for. It's tough to articulate my thoughts on this concept because ultimately, on a spiritual level, we're all connected all the time. And so to experience love is simply a matter of existing outside of your ego self and not allowing your ego to isolate your consciousness into being unaware of the universal connectedness and the universal love which exists. However, as incarnate and individual beings, we do have needs and drives, not just on an instinctive or physical level, but on an emotional and psychological level as well. We desire to have people in our life that we know and trust. And on a psychological level, the feeling of safety that comes with trustworthy kin and friends, those who are closest to us, is irreplaceable. And one of the last barriers of trust is physical touch. You know, if you look at what areas people shy away from, the neck, armpits, sexual organs, vital areas. And so in the sense of a life partner, in the sense of a mate, it's about having someone who's gained the trust in all of the other areas of your life and who now is gaining the trust to your most vital, closest self in the physical world. And we look for an emotional, spiritual, and intellectual harmony that goes with that. And there are so many different ways that people can seek it out in this world, but to have those needs unaddressed, to have those needs still exist as needs unmet, is a challenge that a great many of us face, particularly those of us whose way of viewing the world is very different from the cultures in which we live. We find we have a limited dating pool, and something funny that I've noticed is that oftentimes people who are both of a very metaphysical and magical persuasion will almost be repelled by each other. It's almost as if minute differences in the worldviews of two awakened people are more difficult to reconcile than the vast worldview difference between someone who's fully awakened and someone who maybe doesn't take it that seriously or just isn't that interested, and yet is synergistic in other ways. And the theories I have for this are twofold. One, when you're opening up to psychic and spiritual awareness, you do become vulnerable, and so those minor differences strike harder when both people are wide open. When one of you is shut off and you're not even really operating on the same level, there isn't as much conflict going on because there's a mutual agreement that the area of different beliefs is, you know, you have this one, you have that one. There is no conflict. When you're both operating in the same realm, even minor conflict in that wide open psychic state is very difficult to reconcile. And so it's funny because the level of openness, which is the only way really to have any hope of achieving the heights of true ecstasy and communion, is the very same openness that can make it so difficult to get along and so easy to be wounded. And many of us find it easier to just mix and match and let those needs for physical touch and trustworthy communion be separate from the need for spiritual communion. It is a form of self-limitation, and yet, based on the circumstances of their lives, it is the way that many people choose to go. It's not how I choose to go, but then again, I'm very patient. So, as far as dealing with this loneliness, Keep your friends close, your gods closer. And remember that love which is infinite. For only by radiating out that love which is infinite can you have any hope of finding infinite love in the flesh. And with that, my friends, I bid thee farewell.